Welcome to Mr. Horror. In this video, we'll be diving into 3 true scary flight horror stories that are sure to give you goosebumps. So buckle up and prepare for a terrifying journey as we explore these chilling horror stories of the skies. As a frequent flyer, Sarah was used to the occasional turbulence and delays. But her flight from New York to London was about to become the most terrifying experience of her life. As the plane reached its cruising altitude, Sarah noticed a strange smell emanating from the overhead compartment above her seat. She dismissed it as nothing more than a bad odor until she saw smoke pouring out of it. Panic erupted on the plane as passengers began to scream and scramble for their belongings. The flight attendants tried to calm everyone down, but their efforts were in vain. The smoke was getting thicker, and Sarah could feel the heat from the flames. It was clear that the situation was out of control. As the passengers frantically tried to escape the burning plane, Sarah's mind raced. She knew she had to act quickly to save herself and others. She located the emergency exit and quickly made her way towards it. However, the intense heat and smoke made it almost impossible to breathe, let alone move. Sarah was about to give up hope when she heard a voice coming from the cockpit. The pilot had managed to regain control of the plane and was making an emergency landing. With renewed hope, Sarah continued towards the exit. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Sarah made it to the emergency exit and opened it. Fresh air rushed into the cabin, and Sarah felt a wave of relief. She helped other passengers escape, and they all slid down the evacuation slide to safety. After the incident, Sarah struggled to come to terms with what had happened. She had never felt so close to death, and the trauma stayed with her for a long time. She later found out that the cause of the fire was an electronic device that had malfunctioned and caught fire. Sarah's experience on that flight made her realize that life is precious and that we should never take it for granted. She made a vow to herself to always cherish every moment and never let fear control her. The incident also made her think about the safety protocols on flights and the importance of following them. She learned that it's crucial to pay attention to the safety briefing and to be prepared for any eventuality. From that day on, Sarah approached flying with a newfound respect and appreciation for the safety measures put in place. I'm a flight attendant, and I've seen some pretty scary things in my career. But nothing compares to the flight from hell that I experienced last year. It was a routine flight from New York to Los Angeles, but things quickly went wrong. It all started when we were cruising at 35 feet. Suddenly, there was a loud bang and the plane started shaking violently. Passengers were screaming and some were even crying. The captain came on the intercom and told us that one of the engines had failed and we were going to make an emergency landing. We started descending rapidly and it felt like we were dropping out of the sky. I could hear the passengers praying and sobbing. It was the scariest moment of my life. Miraculously, we made a safe landing, but the horror wasn't over yet. After the emergency landing, the passengers were put on another flight to Los Angeles. I was also assigned to the same flight. Everything was going smoothly until we hit some severe turbulence. The plane was shaking violently, and it felt like we were in a washing machine. Passengers were screaming, and some were even throwing up. I could see the fear in their eyes. The turbulence lasted for what felt like an eternity, but eventually it calmed down. However, the damage was done. Several passengers had injuries, and some even had broken bones. It was a horrifying experience, and I hoped that nothing worse would happen on this flight. Unfortunately, the flight from hell wasn't over yet. As we approached Los Angeles, the plane's landing gear failed to deploy. The captain tried everything he could, but nothing worked. We were going to have to make an emergency landing again. This time, I was much calmer, having gone through the previous 2 terrifying experiences. But the passengers were hysterical. They had had enough, and they just wanted to get off the plane. We made another safe landing, but the passengers were traumatized. It was the worst flight of their lives, and I couldn't blame them. I hope to never experience anything like that again. The flight from Amsterdam to Los Angeles was supposed to be a routine trip, but it quickly turned into a nightmare for the passengers and crew. It started with a strange noise coming from the engine, and then the plane started shaking violently. The pilot announced that they were experiencing technical difficulties and that they would have to make an emergency landing. As the plane descended rapidly, the passengers braced themselves for impact. The flight attendants rushed to secure the cabin, and the screams of terrified passengers filled the air. Finally, the plane crashed into the Pacific Ocean. Miraculously, some of the passengers survived the crash and managed to swim to a nearby island. But as they tried to find food and shelter, they realized that they were not alone on the island. There was something sinister lurking in the shadows, watching their every move. The survivors of the plane crash quickly realized that the island they had landed on was haunted. They could hear strange noises in the night and saw shadowy figures lurking in the bushes. They tried to ignore it and focus on finding a way to be rescued, but they soon realized that the island had other plans for them. One by one, the survivors started to disappear. Some were found dead, their bodies mutilated and twisted in strange ways. Others were never found at all, and the remaining survivors were left to wonder if they were next. After several weeks on the haunted island, a rescue team finally arrived to save the survivors. They were taken back to Los Angeles and reunited with their families, but they could never forget the horrors they had experienced. As the survivors tried to pick up the pieces of their lives, they started to notice strange things happening around them. They would hear the same strange noises they heard on the island and see the same shadowy figures lurking in the shadows. They soon realized that the horrors they had encountered on the island had followed them home. The survivors tried to ignore it and move on, but they could never shake the feeling that they were being watched, that something was still out there waiting for them. Thank you for joining me on this spine-chilling journey through the skies. I hope you enjoyed these true scary flight horror stories and that they'll stick with you long after the flight is over. If you want to hear more true horror stories, make sure to subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell. You never know what scary horror stories I'll have in store for you next. In the meantime, remember to always buckle up and keep an eye on the skies. And if you ever do experience something strange on a flight, don't hesitate to share your story with me in the comments. If you're someone who's scared of flights, know that you're not alone. Many people share this fear, and it's perfectly normal to feel anxious about something that feels out of your control. However, it's important to remember that flying is one of the safest forms of transportation, and pilots and flight crews go through extensive training to ensure a safe journey for everyone on board. If you're struggling with fear of flying, there are several things you can try to ease your anxiety. Deep breathing, meditation, and visualization exercises can help you feel more relaxed and centered before your flight. You can also try distracting yourself with a book, movie, or music during the flight. It's also a good idea to talk to your doctor or a mental health professional about your fear. They can provide you with strategies to manage your anxiety, such as medication or therapy. Remember, there's no shame in seeking help when you need it. Ultimately, it's important to remember that fear is a natural response, but it doesn't have to control you. With the right tools and support, you can learn to manage your fear of flying and enjoy safe and comfortable travels. Thank you for watching and stay safe.